Hey, friends. I just wrapped up a wonderful conversation with my dear friend and publisher, JuLee Brand. JuLee is the founder of Brand Publishing, where my book, Who Do You Think You Are, was published. JuLee and I go back about 30 years, so we've known each other for a long time, and our conversation is really rich. It's informative and it's filled with heart. JuLee is a special person. She has spent those last 30 years that we've known each other helping people find their voice and put it into the world. She has done that through her publishing company, through founding W Brand, but also through art direction and filmmaking and TV. She is very, very talented. And she's built a career around one quiet but powerful conviction. Stories deserve to exist, and the people who carry those stories deserve to be heard. Just like I say at the end of our podcast, your story matters. And I bring that to you because of my relationship with JuLee. I'm so glad that you're here, and welcome, JuLee. Well, hello, and welcome to Story Sessions, where your story matters. I'm your host, Laura Lynn Donahue, and each week we gather for meaningful conversations rooted in lived experience. Let's dive in. JuLee, welcome to Story Sessions, the podcast. I am so glad to have you. I have just always admired you and your skills and your talents. You have spent decades helping people tell their stories. You've done that in many different ways, through art and film and design. You're a wonderful graphic designer. And now the last 8 years or so, in publishing, and you have your own publishing house, W Brand Publishing, out of Nashville. And to me, it seems like you're really hooked on story. And I'd like to know, and so would our audience, how did that thread start to weave into everything that you do artistically or professionally? It seems to always pull back to story. Tell us a little bit about JuLee from the beginning.
Yes. Well, thank you, Laura Lynn, for having me. I'm just so excited to be here because I have just watched you and listened to you. And this has just been such a wonderful treat to have the podcast and have you as our host. And so thank you. And thank you for having me. So where did it all start? Well, I was a small town girl. And without singing karaoke right now, thank you, Journey.
Or quoting Steve Martin.
It's either Steve Martin or it's Journey. I do have an interesting story because I'm from North Dakota. I'm probably most people's first person they've ever met from North Dakota. And I think that part of my love of story came from the fact that, there's not a lot to do when the wind chill is minus 60. It's cold, so you read. And so I had a love of story and actually a love of design and graphics before I could even read. I loved the way that words looked. And so I would carry around books just because I liked the way that words looked, not just a cover. So my love of design started then and really kind of coerced me into going into graphic design only because I realized that if I wanted to be an illustrator, I might not be able to buy food or pay rent. So graphic design it was. And so it was an interesting progression. I started out working, my first real job was at Reunion Records, where I met you, and as a production manager. And I have to say that it was really wonderful having a fantastic mentor who really believed in me and that
Yeah.
I could do basically anything that I set my mind to. And her name was Deb Rhodes. Shout out.
Kudos.
And it was through that that I learned all about printing. I learned about even more about design, had the wonderful privilege to meet photographers and other graphic designers um, and so that was really a jumping off point for me where it was really ingrained in me that, okay, you got to work hard, but this is, telling stories through graphics, communicating messages through graphic design was really important. And then when Deb went to a TV production company, she kind of grabbed me and pulled me over there as well. And I learned how to do animated graphics for television, which another way to tell stories, both visually with motion and with type as well. So that was an interesting thing. I did that for almost 20 years, and then I decided it was time to go full circle. I applied for a job to be art director at Hachette Books. Um, I got the job. And so then that started my career in publishing, where I really saw, how it worked, the bare bones, it was everything behind the curtain. um, so I got to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of the traditional publishing industry. And I decided when my 99-year-old aunt passed away and we lost all of her stories that I wanted to start my own publishing company. And
Mm.
I have to say that was partially that I was very naive to what the independent book publishing industry looked like. But it also was because of her passing and because my dad had passed 20 some years before that, and my uncle as well, and many other aunts and uncles in that time frame, that it was ingrained in me that I was tired of losing stories, that
Mm.
stories were so important, not only to connect humans, but for our legacies. And
Mm.
so I just, I didn't care. I didn't care what it
Yeah.
was going to take. It was now my mission to help people tell their stories, and I needed to do it in any way possible. So that's me in a nutshell and how I got here.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm just wondering, your inspiration was family members, and not losing stories. We don't sit on the front porch anymore and tell stories. Maybe somebody does, but stories don't get written down like they used to. As you think about this and starting a publishing company, would you say you were building it for relatives, so to speak, for legacy? Or did you also have another purpose in mind?
Initially, when I started, it truly was to help people preserve their stories.
Mm.
Because, like you said, we don't sit around the porch. We don't sit around the bonfires anymore telling stories. The oral tradition, how it really started out from the very beginning before people wrote these things down, it was passed on from generation to generation through stories.
Yeah.
And it really was, when I started the company, I was thinking that we were only going to be doing memoir,
Mm.
personal stories, biographies, autobiographies, that kind of thing. But it did progress into fiction and middle grade as well, and business books as too, some self help. But truly, my love is telling people stories, because it's amazing how, especially after all the things that happened in 2020,
Mm.
there was such a disconnect. As humans, there were a lot of people that couldn't be in contact with their loved ones. There was
Yeah.
isolation. And without being able to communicate, a lot of people wrote their stories, which was fantastic. But I think that it became even more apparent to me that we lost something. We lost a little bit of humanity back
Mm.
then. And I think that that's another reason why it's so important for me and such a mission, and really, truly, it's my heart to help as many people tell their stories as possible.
Well, I think that's a fantastic mission, and it worked on me. um, why did you decide to do hybrid publishing as opposed to traditional publishing? And maybe for our listeners who don't know the difference between independent, hybrid, and traditional publishing, maybe we could get a little segue through each of those so it makes a little more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So traditional publishing is, in a nutshell, a publisher will sign you on, give you a deal. Sometimes you get an advance. You don't pay anything, but also you don't receive any royalties until they have recouped all that they have put in it. And usually traditional publishers, they have marketing departments and art departments and publicity departments. So sometimes you won't make any royalty, but you will have it's different distribution usually than an independent publisher. And so hybrid publishing is kind of a combination between self-publishing and traditional. So we have the standards of traditional publishing. So we want to make sure that all of the books that we put out are high quality and that they can sit on a shelf and look as good as any book that came from a big five publisher from New York. But it does require an investment from the author as well. So not only does the publisher put in time and money, but the author also does the majority of the lifting financially. But we partner with all of our authors, and we are very transparent about the fact that, we are doing very quality work. We are doing, you will get the same quality as you will with a traditional publisher. But we also want to basically walk with the authors through the process of what it's going to look like. No matter if you have a traditional publishing deal or if you have a hybrid deal or if you self-publish, you are going to have to promote your book as an author. One, most people don't care who your publisher is. They really don't. They want to know about you, the author. So that's a little bit about it. There are more details to both of them, but really what it comes down to is the money that is invested and who invests it.
And you decided hybrid for more opportunity for more people is what it feels like.
Absolutely. I saw quickly, we started out traditional.
Okay.
And I saw that when you have somebody who has a background in art and design and not necessarily in business, but has a great imagination and a great dream.
And who are we talking about?
So you have to change your theory. And also, I became very involved with the Independent Book Publishers Association. I sat on the board of directors. I have been in their advocacy committee. I am currently in their industry advisory and industry access committees, as well as working on the design awards committee as well. And so by being involved with the IBPA and then working on the hybrid criteria, which are the standards that hybrid publishers should go by when they are doing business. And when I saw that model and I saw how many more people we could help because there is more of a cash flow and there is more of a desire to work with the publisher. When I was traditional, it felt like sometimes people forgot they had a book. If you have some skin in the game, as in a hybrid relationship, my authors really do. They want to make back their investment, and I want to see them make back their investment. So it seems like there is a more active relationship on the hybrid side, and it really makes everyone kind of think more about how can I market this? How can I promote myself? What am I comfortable doing to do that? And so it really, I like the interaction with people more than just publishing a book and then it's out there and that's it. I
Yeah.
like the way that the relationship builds with our hybrid authors.
Yeah. And I'll interject there just because I am one of your authors. You have developed a company that really promotes community and togetherness. And whether I had a book out or not, if I had known all the authors before, I would have wanted to be in their presence. It's a very welcoming community. It's collaborative. People aren't trying to one up the other or sell, it's just, it's a beautiful model that you've built. And so personally, I'll just like to say thank you and just promote that because I think it's important. It's very special to me.
I am so glad that you said that because that is one thing that is really important to me is that we are building our community of authors as well. And I know that you saw this. You've seen this a couple of years. We like to do the Tucson Festival of Books. And this year we had 17 authors and 5 booths. And it was I like to think of it as a big party, but it is so interesting. And you mentioned the part about competition as well.
Mm.
There really is no competition when it comes to our authors. Even though you may have a memoir and somebody else has a memoir, your stories are so different that they're not in competition. They're actually helping lift each other up. And I think just seeing our authors support each other is one of, I can't tell you the satisfaction and the gratitude that I feel every time I see our authors, that when they're sharing each other's posts on, on the social media, platforms or anything, it makes me feel good because this is one of the reasons that I do this is to build that community and have a sense of belonging, because some of the stories that we tell are not your normal stories.
Yes.
Some of them, there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of taboo topics that we tackle, but I feel like that they are so important. And when you said that about community, I mean, that's really, truly, it's a nice byproduct that we have in our family.
It does. It feels like family. JuLee Brand Publishing is coming up on your 8th year in operation. Is that right?
Yes, it'll be 8 years in August. It's
around the corner.
Yeah, just around the corner. It's very excited about that, and the changes that we've made have been pretty significant. Although the company, JuLee Brand Publishing, is, of course, the umbrella for everything that we do, we have a lot of imprints. So an imprint is usually for one certain genre. So we have imprints. JuLee Brand Publishing is our main company, but it's also the imprint for our memoir. Hildebrand Books is our fiction. And we also last year, we started a whole new division called Mill Space Books that highlights military focus, family. Also last year, you graced us with starting our podcast, which was amazing. So, but it was always a dream. But it's all tied together because it is at the core of all that we're doing is we are telling stories because it is so important because everyone has a story. Yeah. And so we just want to keep growing. And this year, starting StorySessions, it really is taking that storytelling to another level with a new and innovative way of telling stories.
Every story moves through stages, and StorySessions is built to meet you at each one. Start with a focused discovery session to uncover your story's arc, and then move into a guided series that sharpens your voice, your positioning, and your path forward. And when you're ready, step into launch with expert coaching, to help your story land with clarity and impact. And sometimes, when a story truly stands out, we don't just help guide it, we publish it. Find out where your story starts at StorySessions.live.
So let's transition into story sessions. With all of this that you've accomplished in the last 8 years, how come it's not enough? How come having stories, publishing them, helping people get their story out there, what was missing for you that you said, this isn't enough? I need to help people get their stories out in a different way. And what does that look like?
Yeah. So, that really, it has always been at the forefront of my mind of people are investing time and money in what we're doing. And how can we make sure that what we're doing is giving them what they need? And then that kind of spiraled into a whole thing of what about the individuals that are out there, that they have an amazing story, but they do not have the accessibility. So whether it is a confidence issue, or if it is a disability, or if it is just, I don't know what I don't know. And so that is what was the catalyst for starting Story Sessions, was just, we have to meet people where they are, and whether that is, hey, I know that I have this story, but I don't know how to tell it. I'm not a writer. I tell you, that is one of the things that I hear from people all the time is, I'm not a writer. I can't write my story. I know I have one, but I can't write it. And what I like to tell people is that it's not about being a writer. It's about being a storyteller. If you can tell your story, there's ways out there that you could actually write that. And so because we have this wonderful podcast that you started, because we communicate with things and we like to brainstorm about things, it was right there at our fingertips. There's innovation, there's technology out there that we can tell the story and get a transcript and write your story from your transcript, your own words. And so it was, that was truly the catalyst for Story Sessions.
Well, and how is that different from one of those programs that you might see pop up in an ad while you're scrolling? Call us. We'll do memory once a day or once a week and write these things down, and then we'll put it in a book for you. Those are great services. But this Story Sessions Live is different. It's not you alone as the storyteller.
Right. And I know that you know this firsthand. When you are writing your own story, you are siloed. Usually you're alone and you're doing all this, and you really don't have any feedback of like, okay, do I know what I'm doing? Is this resonating with anyone? Story Sessions is not just one of those prompts. It's not a prompt to help you write your story. What it is having a person on the other side who has been through the process of writing, that knows what makes a good story, and will help you craft that story, to find the story, to find that through line, that when somebody closes your book, when they've finished it, when they've invested their time, what are they going to take away from that? And that's what we help you do with Story Sessions, is that we help you find that through line. What's that takeaway that people are going to have? What should the title be? What really is going to drive your reader? Because I think one of the hardest things for anyone that's writing their story or even telling their story is, how is this resonating with who is listening or who is reading? And so that is a big thing that we do, is we really guide people through the process of telling their story and making sure that we stay on track, or we're able to uncover something that perhaps they even forgot that would be very integral to the story itself.
Well, I also see it as an opportunity for folks to be coached in the process. And so when I was writing my memoir with JuLee Brand, in the early days, you and I had coaching conversations, and you were so kind to give me guidance. I was writing. I am a writer. I enjoy writing. So that was my way to get my story out, was to write it. But there were a few things that you reminded me of that I think are really important for Story Sessions Live, because you have the opportunity with the person that you're interviewing to coach along the way. Tell me a little bit more about that. Tell me a little bit more. Pull that thread. One thing I remember is you told me at one point I had basically written myself out of the story. And that's just because I started focusing on other things rather than bringing it back to me. It was my memoir that was important. And then one of the other things that really struck home with me is if I said I walked into the cottage and stood, well, what does the cottage look like? I mean, what questions would you ask? Would you know?
What did it smell like? Were
yeah.
there curtains? Is it rustic? Is it freshly painted? Those things that really pull people into the story are those things that you take for granted because it lives in your head rent free.
Yeah.
And you've told yourself, that's a big thing too, is that especially when someone is telling their own story, they have told this story in their head. It's lived there their entire life, or however long ago it happened. But it is revealing it to your reader or to your interviewer, play by play, so that they know what that's about. And I have to say that literally, I would say 99% of our memoirists that I say those same things to, it was like, okay, well, what did that smell like? Okay, what did that look like? For those of us who have never seen that part of the world or know what, that looks like, please tell us, to get involved. And I think that is really what is missing from the prompts, the story writing apps that are out there, is the communication. Again, it's that connection. It's humanity. It's really having that human touch. And it's also what's lacking in the AI community. You can get prompts, you can do prompts, and you can bounce things off of ChatGPT, and you can bounce things off of Claude, and it's great. And it's a wonderful tool to use. However, it's not your voice. And that's what we need to remember, is that when we're doing this, when we're doing our interviews, it truly is, when the transcript that comes through those are your words. And we work with either another ghostwriter, human, or a developmental editor to work with that transcript and then create the story from that. But I think now we're kind of settling back into the thing of, no, let's go back to humanity, especially for readers. Readers who read a lot know. They just know. When there's not that human touch, they know. If you're taking the artistry and you're taking the humanity out of the words, then why are you doing it? You really have to think about, and that is one of the things that we ask. It's our first discovery call, whether it's JuLee Brand Publishing or it's Story Sessions, is what are your goals? Of course you want to sell. you want to sell books. But aside from that, there has to be more than that. There has to be a reason why you want to tell your story. And we have so many people that tell their stories because they've been through trauma. They've survived some things that most humans would say, there's no way. There's no way that you could be a normal human being. There's no way that you could be this light in the world helping others after what you went through. And yeah, that's really what it comes down to for me is just that it is that sharing stories. It helps people. It's part of my service to humanity to help people tell their stories. And so this is another level of that.
So let's explore Story Sessions and break it down a little bit more. Story Sessions is a service, not a best friend to come alongside you and help you tell your story. It's a professional. What if I don't want to tell all my story? Or what if I don't know that I want to tell my story, but I'm curious? Because a lot of us think, who wants to read my story? I'm not that interesting. Well, yes, you are. You are. You have something to share. So how does that work?
So, and I mean this when I say it. It's been the motto of JuLee Brand Publishing, but it fits well as I do believe everyone has a story. But like you said, it helps to talk to someone that you aren't related to, that isn't your best friend, that can tell you, yeah, that's absolutely that is where we need to go. So we have different levels with Story Sessions. So the first one is, a discovery session where we sit there and we talk and we uncover what that story is. Where do you want to go from there? Do you think that you want to tell the whole story? Is it just a blog post? Or is this something that we can build on your entire story? Because I can tell you, the majority of people, you have to have a focus to the story, but there's a story there because it's not, you don't have to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to have climbed Mount Everest, but you do have a story and it is very helpful to leave legacy, to have that story written down. And that is one of the things that, we find so important about Story Sessions is working with veterans, working with the elderly, assisted living facilities in telling their story for legacy, because they may not be around to tell those stories. And they're not only for families, but it's for history. So tell me, because this is how I feel. I feel like on this podcast, we are having a Story Sessions live. I'm talking to you, trying to bring out the story. Now, this is obviously for a podcast and we're videotaping and all that, but is it kind of like that? Laura Lynn, it's absolutely like that. It's exactly like that, because actually it was this whole podcast that really, just kind of pinged that, like, hey, we could use this technology to actually do our story sessions. So although when we do story sessions, it looks exactly like this. We see video, we record, but we only record the audio. So we only record the audio, but we like to see each other when we're talking. So we record that, we get the transcript, and that is really what is the basis for not only the discovery sessions to find your story, but then we can go further. We have different levels of help, because some people might just say, oh, hey, I have now a direction for my story. I'm going to write it. And more power to them. They can go off and write it. But some people know that they're going to need help further on. So we can have more sessions and we can discover each chapter. And they may take it and run with it from having each of the chapters, revealed to them, through conversation and like, this is interesting, this not so much, go down this rabbit hole, that kind of thing, with instruction. Or after we get to that point, they might say, hey, you know what? We're this far in. Why don't we take each one of those chapters that we found, and why don't we do a session on each one of those? And I will tell you this, they tell the story. I will help them walk through the story. And that is each chapter, we take the transcription and then go from there for their manuscript and put it all together.
Wow, such a great concept. I was thinking back about kind of when we were talking early on about story sessions evolving as a way to help people get their stories out. And you mentioned disability, which reminded me of my parents who are in their 80s. And my dad, well, neither of them really write anymore, but they have so many stories, just to sit down with my dad. And now it might be days, it might take forever, but that is the kind of, I see that. I feel that the impediment to the older person could be the keyboard, or it could be an impediment to someone who is unable to type at all. And there seems to be so much inclusion.
Yeah. And that is, that's one of the heart and soul of our company is everyone. It is inclusive. We want to make sure that we do have that accessibility. That was another level of how do we make storytelling accessible to people that have a disability? For instance, we have a gentleman who, one of our authors now, he has cerebral palsy. And he has a caregiver, and his caregiver, and he wrote his story. And then half of the book literally is their relationship as caregiver and caregiveree. So yeah. It was, but if we would have had this technology, if we would have had story sessions in place before they started writing, this would have made their process a lot easier than being, with our author dictating to his caregiver and then the caregiver having to transcribe and do everything. So if we would have had this, it would have made things a lot easier, because it is, whether you have a physical disability or if, I know how much more easily it will be for dyslexics to tell their stories than to type this out. And so it was very important to me that we needed to have some way that people could tell their stories. Now, and I do want to interject here as well, is that while Story Sessions is under the umbrella of W. Brand Publishing, we never want to hold people to the fact that they have to publish through us. Now, of course, we would love them to publish through W. Brand Publishing, but if they just want it for legacy, if they want their story just to, just a chapter, just one story of one time of their life, we can do just that transcript. It doesn't necessarily have to be a book. And that was another thing, too, that was very important to me, that, yes, we have a business. We have the publishing company and we have this division, but it is my heart to tell the stories, not necessarily the business. If I had it my way, we would just do a barter system and somebody would give me eggs and make me cake and stuff like that. But that's not how the world works anymore. But it is truly, it is a thing of this is, it's my heart, it's my mission to do this. And so this is important. We made storytelling accessible, because also you have to look at, if somebody went to a ghostwriter, you're looking at usually a minimum of $15,000 for a junior ghostwriter. That's a starting out ghostwriter to tell your story. Now, there are other ways to do it that are less expensive, and sometimes that includes AI, which you have to be very diligent if that matters to you about how they're working. But that was another thing, is that it can be very financially inaccessible for people to tell their stories. But if they
Good
can
point.
get even to the library and use a computer to set up sessions like this, it makes it even more accessible, to use that word again. Because
It's a
again,
good
we
word.
we want we want to meet you where you are, literally. And that could be a host of ways. But as long as we have some sort of internet connection, some way that we can do this, even through, if it's a phone, we can also do it through a phone. I don't have to see your face. You don't have to see mine. That just is a nice benefit because it does have more of that human connection. But it's possible to do it through the phone as well. So it was important to me that we do this. And it was the piece that was missing from our company. Like when you started the podcast last year, that was great. It was like, oh, okay, now we're onto something. But it was like, wait a minute. There was still an emptiness in my heart.
Yeah.
It's like, we got to take this further.
Yeah. Because not everybody wants to be on a podcast, or the opportunity for anyone who wants to, who needs a nudge. That this is a wonderful opportunity. And if there was somebody who said, I want to tell this story, but they've just decided they're just not going to, until they hear a little bit of this idea of story sessions. And then if that person could make that leap or that step or whatever it feels like to them, but when you get on the call with the coach, you begin talking, you find some comfort there, then is it possible your storyteller voice emerges in that space and you just didn't even know it was there?
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes you just have to have someone listen. Someone who truly, bottom line, they are there to listen to your story. They care. This is not just about a money transaction. This is about getting your story out there. And if you have someone like yourself, I mean, you're so great at interviewing, because that is the thing of, you care. You care like I care. So when we're listening to these stories, it's really important. And it's not just us. So we do have other people that are going to be working as a team, and we are going to be training and vetting people when we're growing, especially when we look into the veterans associations and assisted living facilities. We will need more of a team. But the biggest thing that I will be looking for is, when we hire more people, is truly that love of humanity, the love of story, and making people feel comfortable. It's amazing, just in the few sessions that I've done, how you can start out with one conversation and how so many rabbit holes open up. And you find out that it's like, oh, well, gosh, I could look at it this way. I could look at it as I'm helping people. Like, I really want to show them what I've gone through, and this is what you should do. Or just by telling the story this way, they're connecting because they see themselves in my story. It's a different, like, the outcome of one person who might have a story that's similar to another person, but they went with a different hook. They went with a different angle. They concentrated on a different version of what could have been the same outcome for both people. So it's really, truly there is an art to this, and you know this firsthand. There is an art to being able to interview, and a lot of it has to do with listening and following the rabbit. Follow that rabbit down the hole. So you have to look at, okay, is this going to be my legacy story for my relatives, my children, my family? That might have a different tone than I'm telling this story to help others.
Hmm.
So it may be the same story, but you can see how those different rabbit holes or the different outcomes in what we would ask as interviewers, how different that would be as opposed to legacy versus help.
I think it's especially important, and you've hit on it a couple times, to emphasize that the person who is being interviewed is respected in the process and is listened to. Listening is really a lost art, in my opinion. As someone who backs away, quiets down, lets everyone else talk, I get interrupted often. And the fact that you've got a captive audience, one person there to listen to you. They're not writing down what you're saying. They're listening to you. Some of us have lived in the same house, and we have what we think is the same story, but every story is different. And it will be told, one sibling will tell a story this way, another will tell it this way, the parent will tell it this way. And to be able to pull out that voice, your story, just what you said, your story matters. I don't even know how to drive it home any more than that.
It's funny because truly it's, sometimes it's the simplest of concepts. And I think it was Einstein that said it's the simplest way, but no simpler. We always say, W Brand Publishing will say, words matter. We have it on our banners, but then we grew it. Then it was stories matter. And then it was your stories matter. It's everyone has a story. It's our little taglines, but we mean them. It's like we really, really believe that stories matter. And, well, what about memory care? What about all these stories, like looking at those stories that we probably will lose before others? Not necessarily, because no one is guaranteed tomorrow, but looking at just statistics, because dementia and Alzheimer's, it's hit our family, and it's cruel. It is one of the cruelest things. There are a lot of cruel diseases and infirmities that are out there, but to not remember, and of course it is harder on the family that's left than the person that may not know what they're going through. But that's another reason why stories are important, to get those down, so that one day you're not like, who was related to, just if it was family tree. That's like the bare minimum of stories, like who did what in what family? Were we horse thieves? When did we come over from the old country? Just those things alone, of course, we want to know. But when it comes to those stories, like my mom tells about her, a horse that they had on the farm, and this horse did not like people. And she just has these wonderful stories of it would take you out to this big rock that was in the middle of the field, and it would throw you off onto the rock, and then it would run back to the farm. So, just like different things like that. It's like, that is one story that I have with me now that, she has given me. And so, it's kind of a practice what you preach thing. Now that I point this way because I am with my mom. She's 96 and she remembers things, and it's wonderful to have those little stories that, I will now take with me.
By tuning into this podcast, you understand one thing. Everyone has a story to tell, and that includes you. But sometimes we need a little help to bring our story into the world. That's where StorySessions comes in. We're a collective of published authors, editors, and experienced storytellers who know that great stories aren't manufactured, they're revealed. Through thoughtful listening, guided conversations, and respect for your voice, we help uncover the story that is already inside you. StorySessions, your story told the way it was meant to be. Find out more at storysessions.live.
So I have a question for you that you might need a minute to think about, although the answer might come right away. But the question is, what happens if someone's story is never told?
That's an excellent question. And it's a personal one. Because it's the reason that W Brand Publishing has its name. W is actually named after my dad, William, because I know that he would have been a writer if he was alive today. When people don't tell their stories, for many reasons, I believe that we lose a bit. We not only lose a bit of them, but we do lose a part of history, and not just a familiar history. If you don't know someone and you're reading their memoir and they're not related to you, and you learn something or you feel something, you feel connected, you feel part, you belong, you're not an outcast, that's important. And I think that when we lose stories, we lose that ability of connection, whether you know them or not. And so that was one of the things that with my dad, it made it so hard to lose him as well, and why I became a huge World War II buff, because he was in the Pacific Theater and he never talked about anything except he had to peel potatoes a lot and he really hated peeling potatoes. So that was one story that I had, and it makes me laugh. And I think about it literally every time I peel a potato.
Of course.
Yeah. But it's things like that, and I saw this too. My uncle he passed just 9 months before my dad did, and he was in D-Day. I think they actually talked about World War II together, but they would never talk about it to their wives or to anyone else. So I thought it was really interesting when Saving Private Ryan came out, and then consequently, just shortly thereafter, was Band of Brothers. That was that series on HBO. When that came out, especially Band of Brothers, I think it opened a door that gave the World War II vets permission to tell their stories. And I think they finally felt like they belonged, because for so long they were the silent generation. They didn't tell their stories because they felt they couldn't, or shouldn't, because it was their duty to go as U.S. citizens. They were going to defend whatever they were going to find, and they didn't know what they were going to find. And so it's interesting, and I always say that I have a little story that I love, and I love that it came to fruition after really becoming a fan of Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers. I said that if I ever met Steven Spielberg or Tom Hanks, if I ever had that chance, that I would thank them for telling those stories, because it opened so many doors, and because I never got to hear my uncle or my dad tell their stories. And giving the vets permission, it was wonderful. And I actually did get the opportunity to meet Mr. Tom Hanks, and I did thank him, and the man teared up. And I teared up, and it was a beautiful moment. But it was so heartfelt. I didn't do a selfie with him. I didn't do anything. I just, it was one thing. It was just, I have to thank you, because what they did really did give permission to those vets. It's okay to tell your story.
Yeah.
It enlightened me a lot. Put it that way.
Yeah. Well, also just even taking it to another level, when you tell your story, you have the opportunity to break a cycle. And it's Gen X, we didn't get a lot of the emotional from our boomer parents. Things were kept quiet, and telling your story can break a cycle. It can break the cycle or bring awareness to it, just like the Vietnam veterans or PTSD that is coming, really into the forefront, especially because people are telling their stories.
Mm-hmm. And telling the story, especially, when you're talking about PTSD and veterans, I think that when you take your story and you internalize it and you don't get it out, it can be very, very harmful to your mental health. So sharing and connecting, building your community through telling your story is so important, because you can go down some dark paths when you have gone through traumas, generational traumas, whether it's combat, whether, so many different things. And the only way that you can get through that truly is talking it out. And whether that is telling your story to document it, for a court case, or you're talking to your therapist, or you're talking to your StorySessions interviewer to get your story out. It's truly, sometimes it does feel a little bit like therapy.
Wow. Well, JuLee, thank you. Thank you for this conversation, but thank you for building something beautiful. Thank you for stepping out on a limb. Thank you for building it with intention and with the desire to create community and connection. And thank you for letting me be a part of it, because I never would have gotten on a podcast had you not asked me. And not everyone can write a book, but everybody deserves the chance to be heard. And I see that as the mission, right up there with meeting people where they are. You also deserve the chance to be heard. And that's why StorySessions in all of its forms exists.
Thank you, Laura Lynn, for having me. And thank you for doing this podcast and just being willing to jump in this fun pool of uncertainty sometimes, but seeing the vision that I have, being part of my unicorn team, it is just so wonderful to be able to work with people that, this may not have been on your bingo card for life, but when opportunities arrive and you see the impact that it makes on others' lives, I think that, that it speaks volumes about who you are as a person and where your heart is. And I love that you're a part of this. And thank you so much for having me on. This has been wonderful to actually talk about StorySessions and a little bit about me, and which is, sometimes very uncomfortable. I would rather stay behind the scenes. But I think when it's this important to me, the mission of what we're doing, I think that sometimes I have to actually step up in front of the mic.
Yes, and we would not be here if it were not for you. So thank you. It has been a pleasure to have you, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, bye. Thanks so much for listening to StorySessions, where your story matters. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone you know. To learn more about the StorySessions family, visit storysessions.live. That's storysessions.live. Thanks so much, and see you next week.